I've got exciting news. We've got sticker merch. Mouthful with Shanti brings you captivating conversations that cut through the bullshit while laughing about it. We elevate marginalized voices. We shoot the shit. We have a good time. Support this very free podcast and its production costs by donating to my Venmo at Shanti Charan, ShantiCharan. DM me your address after you Venmo. I will mail you one of our new stickers. Thank you again for your support. I feel like I'm fangirling just a little bit because I'm listening to your book, and it's so funny because that's a term I use now I say listening to a book, but I'm listening to your book right now and your voice and you telling me about like your life. And I'm on chapter 31 right now. So I haven't finished it. So I was really trying to get to the end, but also if you say anything that has to do with the end of it, I welcome that as well.
Of course.
Please introduce us to what brought you about to writing this book.
Sure. So I was working as a media producer in Los Angeles. And I had studied acting at undergrad at NYU. I got into production because a myriad reasons. I was nervous about auditioning, and being that vulnerable person, and rejection and all of those things. And I thought, if I put myself behind the camera, I'll produce movies, and then I'll be able to put myself in them. And then of course, time goes by, and then you take jobs that are helping your bank account instead of being able to give you that artistic pursuit. So I got stuck doing that, and I found myself in an Adderall addiction. I was never one of those kids in college. I studied acting, so I was not one of those kids who had to stay up late cramming for tests and experimented with Adderall like I think a lot of kids in university do. So that was not me. So I didn't really get into it until my late 20s, and just so I could have long days on set, and then back at the editing suite, and then I loved how it gave me the ability to do so much. And I've always been a bit of a perfectionist.
When's your birthday?
November 3rd. I'm a Scorpio.
Okay. I'm a Virgo, but I don't know much about signs, but I've heard Virgos are perfectionists.
That is true.
Because I can relate. I love being efficient.
Yeah.
It turns me on.
Yeah.
I'm like, look at how much shit I got done today.
Totally. And
can I get more shit done?
And exactly. So I was like, oh, well, if 15 milligrams of Adderall can get me, there, then how about 30? And it just, it snowballed from there. And then I found myself 2.5 years into an Adderall addiction, doing 120 milligrams of Adderall a day, which is just an exorbitant amount. I was drinking Negronis at 4 p.m. out of my Nalgene to start leveling out.
Yeah.
And then I ran out. The prescription ran out. The people that were selling me supplemental pills weren't able to get it for me. And I had read this article on Facebook. It was written by a pediatrician that was written to sway parents away from giving their children Adderall, prescribing them amphetamines, and was ultimately arguing this is basically the same thing as crystal meth. You're giving your kids just meth in pill form.
Yeah.
So it was obviously not meant for the purpose that I read it with, which was
insight.
well, if it's the same thing, I could just get crystal meth, because what I had known of gay culture and Grindr culture, hookup culture, these apps that allow sex to happen at any day, anytime, anywhere. Any country, you name it. So what I had known about being a Californian at that point, and a gay Californian on these apps, is that people are advertising crystal meth, party and play, they call it. PMP is the term. It's become a real staple of a certain subculture within gay communities. My ex, who I was with when I was an Adderall addict, and I used to make fun of people that did it. They were the black sheep of the gay community. Those that would stoop so low as to become gross meth addicts, and we really judged them. But then I was like, well, I'm out of Adderall and I need something to keep me going.
Yeah.
My boyfriend at the time, his mother had just passed away. There was a lot being demanded of me personally and professionally. And I was like, there's no fucking way I'm going to get through all of this sober when I'm used to functioning at these high levels due to these amphetamines. So I went on to Grindr. I bought myself some meth. To be fair, it was not the first time I had tried it. I had dabbled with it, but I had never used it for this purpose as a replacement for Adderall. and I got really into it. It helped, and then it spiraled from there. Was not ready to give it up. Then I started. My partner found me smoking meth one morning in my car when we were supposed to fly out to Chicago to help handle the arrangements after his mother had passed, and that kind of devastation ended my life as I knew it. I mean, it ended my relationship. It ended my occupation at the time. I was
Even the way you described it in the book when you came back to the apartment and the things were gone and it was like...
Yep. He kicked me out of the apartment. I came back a few days later. He had taken the pictures out of frames.
Yeah.
He had taken all the clothes that were his besides any of the clothing
As
items
if he
that
was
I had
never
given
there,
him.
you
As if
said.
he were never there. Just like wiped away. And that's what it feels like as I really haven't spoken to him since. I've sent him an apology letter. You know, I think I wore him down. It's sad because honestly, I think he would probably very much enjoy the person I am now.
Yeah.
But, you know, right, what are you going to do?
Yeah, those chapters, right? The people that enter and then leave are chapters as they do.
That's absolutely right. Yes. But that's what got me into crystal meth, and then it just spiraled from there. Then I started dabbling in the party and play culture, which is a combination of crystal meth with often anonymous group sexual scenarios that incorporate other drugs that you had asked me about when I arrived today about G. G is another one of the drugs that's combined in these kinds of settings. Other
So
stimulants.
what is G exactly?
Sure. So, okay. G it's technically a depressant. People have called it the date rape drug. It is a solvent, a liquid solvent. GHB is how it's most commonly referred to. GBL, however, is the purest form of it. You can't even purchase it in America. They've made it illegal to purchase here. You have to order it from abroad. Like countries like Poland and China and Korea will sell it. To be able to get it in bulk here, you need like a janitorial license or like to own a cleaning company.
Wow.
But
for P&P, they were able to get all of this.
Well, because people like me were illegally importing it. People like me before me was me. But yes, dealers and such, we found sneaky ways of getting it across customs and stuff like that. And then they'll mix it with lye and other things to be able to make it more plentiful. And that's once you mix it with lye, it becomes GHB, which is the more commonly utilized form of it that you would hear about in other cities. GBL, for some reason, the purest form is really only found in San Francisco for the most part. It's mostly done there. And if you do like a little 2 milliliter dose, you have to mix it with a sugary or solvent a sugary beverage usually because it is just like the most acrid flavor you could ever imagine. And moreover, it is like hydrochloric acid, like this wooden table between us here. Like if I were to spill GBL on it, it would just eat away at the table. And meanwhile, the gay guys be like putting two milliliters of that in, down their throats.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So that's why you have to mix it, because otherwise it will just like tear away your esophagus.
Yeah.
But imagine that. That's what this kind of poison is like what we're putting in our throats. They order it to take graffiti off walls. It's been used to like take blood off highways. Like that's what we're talking about.
Have you felt any difference in your throat or how you could use it after?
You're not the first person to ask that, and strangely, I don't think I suffered any long-term effects in that physical effects in that way. Thank God. But I definitely had a few moments where I dosed myself without thinking about mixing it.
Yeah.
And like thought I was gonna die, like
oh my
unable
God,
to
I'm
breathe.
sorry. You felt that pain.
Yeah, it was crazy. But the reason people do it is because it is the most pleasure of any drug you could ever imagine. And I'm not advertising in that way, because you read my book, you will see the more destruction and mayhem stemmed from my G use than the crystal, or the sleep deprivation or anything else. I was in multiple car accidents because I was driving on G. And the thing about G is it's the most pleasure you've ever had, but you sit on the brink of unconsciousness without even realizing it. Like with alcohol, you'll be drinking, and you may start to fade, and your faculties will slowly lessen, and you will know when you're going to perhaps pass out. But
Yeah.
with G, you could be up talking at a million miles per hour and then just boom, fall out, they call it.
And that's what I heard you talk about a lot at these PNPs, or are they referred at a PNP?
They call this. They always call it a party.
Like, how do I use this word?
Like, yeah, PMP is like the overarching term.
So at these parties,
yeah,
then,
parties.
where you're playing, I heard you talk about a lot where people were just falling out, and it just like in regards to sex and when you're doing it, could you pass out like while fucking?
Yeah, it would happen, and I address that in the book because ultimately what it is when people would pass out and somebody
Yeah.
would continue to fuck them, like the word is rape. Like
Yeah.
that is plain and simple what it was, but it didn't. And I had that happen to me where I would wake up from a G overdose and have somebody inside of me and realize like, well, this is a mixture of things. Like one, I didn't tell them that they couldn't fuck me, but wait, is the
Yeah.
onus on me? Like it there's this haze that's formed from the bilateral drug use.
Yeah.
And like we're all consenting in the use of it, but where does the line of consent get drawn?
I felt that part. I think it was like around chapter 19-ish
Yeah,
or
it gets
something. You were
confusing.
talking, and it was the tourists. There were some tourists that were involved, and so it's not even like you can find them after you come to. Like I felt very, I felt for you in that in that part of the book. I just passing out, and then people still continuing on, and
Yeah, it was really troubling to witness. I do document one individual who ended up getting arrested because so many people went to the police. He was purposefully overdosing people, purposefully wanting. His fetish was to have sex with them after they were
Yeah.
passed out and couldn't give consent, and to film it. So there was all kinds of
How
documentation of it.
scary that
I know, it's
people
so
are
dark. It's so dark.
infiltrating these spaces like that.
Yeah, and more infiltrating. Sometimes it's not just a nefarious individual that infiltrates the space, but the meth is tricky. Like I was having this conversation this morning, like of what's the difference between cocaine and crystal. Like people that on cocaine make shitty decisions and they lie and they steal and they cheat, just like people on crystal meth. But there is something in the chemistry of the way crystal affects certain individuals that turns them evil.
Yeah.
It turns them into people who make these decisions that they just never would have otherwise.
Yeah.
So I wonder, like, have they always been predators, or did the extended use unearth something in them?
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing curiosity of
So
mine.
I guess I'm wondering then, just to go a little off topic. So my job, I adjunct at local jails, teaching college level courses to people who are incarcerated. So
Yeah.
when they get out, hopefully their chances of recidivism decrease.
Yes.
A lot of my students in there's different levels of security, different dorms. I'm in a lower security level. A lot of people deal with addiction in that space, and meth hits all different types of communities and people. It's not what for people that are, I guess, struggling with figuring out a path on how to wean off or how to, because they all have said something similar. Is like when they're on it, these types of actions, it's like uncontrollable. You don't know the extent of things. I guess what helped you, I guess, heal in that way and escape that hold?
I was lucky in the fact that I had a family to be able to escape to. I was able to leave the West Coast. The West, it's so much more pervasive over here. Not to say that it isn't everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in Europe, it's in other countries. It's definitely in the Midwest, but but California, it's just hyper concentrated. So
Yeah.
getting out of San Francisco and the Bay Area for a while, even Los Angeles, where it's pretty pervasive as well. I moved back to the Philadelphia area where I grew up. not at all a city that I love or that nurtures my creativity. I didn't really have an artistic community there like I do in other places, but I just knew it was the right move to be. People, places, things is like the adage that a lot of recovery groups express, that's you want to get away from the people and the places and the things that were associated with your addiction and your use. So that was the most helpful for me, just getting away from it all physically.
Does your mom live in Philadelphia?
She does, yeah. Mom, uncle, dad. My dad did. He recently moved. But and my brother was there during the pandemic. He lived with me. So I just being accountable to other people.
How did her being, because I found that relationship very interesting, how you describe your relationship with your mom throughout the book. At one point, you say something along the lines of how, her being around could be so frustrating, but also you don't want her to not be around.
Exactly.
You know that.
Can't wait for her to leave, and I wish she never would.
Yeah, and sometimes I know, I can't say I've never felt that. I've relationships with our mom. So I guess I'm wondering, because you mentioned how she practices different forms of spirituality and healing,
yoga,
and
qigong,
but also her criticism. She seems to be very critical at times of like certain things.
Yeah, she's
which
very
my mother is also.
Yeah, of course.
I
She's
definitely connected.
She's an Italian American mom. I mean, she's and like very type A for somebody who's so zen. It's so funny.
How do you feel like her being around with her spirituality and her wonderful mom criticalness but lovingness? How has that helped you in that time?
She was the perfect mom to escape to. She was the type that like will be like, you are out of your fucking mind, Chase. Like she'll like tell you straight up, but then also be like, you're joining me for yoga, right? Just like to have that duality is honestly what an addict needs on the other side of this all. I was very lucky. I had friends who didn't have that, and they had to find other angles and other support systems. My one friend, a character later in the book named Harry, his mom is an ongoing meth addict. So he struggled. He would want to see his mother in sobriety, but it would be super triggering for him. And it's that just keeps the cycle of pain going, and it makes it even harder for him to stay clean. And in fact, he's relapsed 12 times since we both got clean together back in 2017. So relapse is so fucking common. It's especially with crystal, because the way that I'm no scientist here, but my understanding is that the way that the dopamine works, getting off of crystal meth, there's always this pink cloud era that lasts like 3 to 6 months, and you feel so good about making all the right decisions and getting healthy finally, and your brain chemistry starts to shift, but then it levels out. Like the dopamine rush from getting clean is not replacing the dopamine rush that you were getting from the chemicals, and that's often when people will
and then
get
life
pulled
is
back
also
in.
starting to settle in, and the optimism is difficult to maintain.
Yes, and that's so it's tough. It's tough to stay on this side of things, and that's why a lot of people, I'm not somebody who does the 12 steps. It wasn't for me. I certainly leaned on recovery meetings in the early days. But I know a lot of people that like are diehard, that they go to a meeting, 5 meetings a week, talk to their sponsor every day, and bless their heart. Like I know that system works, and if you've had several relapses, I think, it's probably even more
needed, the support system and the accountability of showing up and going there. But
I also get a lot of people that are in the program that look at me, and when they hear that I don't do it, and I can tell there's like an air of like, well, it's just about time. It's only a matter of time till he goes. Till he. So
a little judgy of your path. The path to being clean and sober is not monolithic.
No, it's not. It's not.
And so if that works for you, that is great.
Yeah.
But so this was a long tangent, but to go back to the parties that we were talking about, one thing that shocked me were cameras being around. It was as if it can be like Zoom sex parties from all around the world. And you could
Yes.
just be at a sex party and you're like, look at them having an orgy in
So
Italy.
yes,
Or, you know,
let me
are people
explain that.
signing
So,
papers? I'd be
no,
terrified.
there's no NDAs. There's
It's like everyone can see my butthole from around the world.
literally, like, it's a butthole. It's an international global butthole show. It really is. It really is. So to explain that, there's a chapter where I go into how on Zoom. So everybody knows Zoom now because of the COVID. But before that, back in 2016, when I was in Tweakerworld, if you will, I had only heard of Zoom for the very first time. It was only really being used by certain companies that had business meetings or around the globe or whatever. Because you could put 40,
You're like, we
80
got
people.
something else but
Yeah,
business
yeah.
meetings.
So people would have sex parties on Zoom, and you'd have Zoom running, and you'd have to go into like a Google Plus. There was like this defunct Google social media site. You go into Google Plus to find what the name of the Zoom room and the passcode was. It was like all this coded language to be able to just figure it out, and then you'd be in this Zoom room, and there would be sex parties, meth sex parties from around the world. Be like, oh, that guy's in Thailand, and then there would be like 6 or 7 of them from San Francisco. So you'd be like, oh, it's my roommate. Like, oh, my roommate's over at Todd's house. You know, I came home one day, and my roommate was like, yeah, it looked like you were getting fucked when you passed out. Did you know that? Like, I was like, you were watching.
Oh my! And
It's
then
absurd.
see, right now it's like, oh my God! And then what did I witness and how? But I guess I would love to have. I guess I'm just. It's admirable be able to freely fuck like that, like everyone's watching.
Yeah, there is something admirable about it. It's excessive, and I think it stems from the pendulum effect of like a lot of these individuals feel stagnated. Sorry, I'm running on very little caffeine.
I get
What
it.
is the word I'm looking for?
Stagnated?
Stagnated. That is the word. Yes, thank you. By sexual trauma, by rejection, by shame, whether it's growing up in a religious setting where they've been told by their community or their family that who they are and what they want and what turns them on is inherently wrong, and people that have gotten HIV and they have shame around that, or people that have suffered horrible rejection. It turns into this desire to go to the other end of the spectrum. Like, I want to be able to have the most amount of sex, the most brutal sex, like with the most amount of guys. And then it just, the pendulum effect is wild.
So then let's move to monetizing this,
Uh-huh.
And how. Not that sounds so cruel, monetizing
No, I
on
know
it,
what
but being able to see this community and being like, I want to be who you
Supplies.
became
Yeah.
in Tweakerworld.
So what you're alluding to is in the book. I start as an addict, and I move into becoming a drug dealer who grows to become a very large drug dealer,
Businessman.
supplier. A businessman.
Yeah.
But with all of the glorious faults, you haven't gotten to all the parts where it all falls apart.
Oh
yet.
my God. And I'm okay if you tell me anything, because right now, out of the horse's mouth is like
for
the best.
sure.
It's like,
for sure. So I got into it because it's just like the way my brain works. I was like, well, I'm buying all this meth anyway, and like friends want some from, like, they're always asking if they can like get a 10 sack from me anyway. Like when I'm at the sex party, I may as well just see if I can buy more. So I went to my dealer. I was like, instead of buying an eighth, can I buy an ounce? Or can I buy an ounce for the price that you sell it to your dealers for? And so I ended up becoming actually a driver for a few drug dealers, because I
remember for Xander was his name,
Right.
I think. Yeah. Which I thought was kind of an adorable, it's a cute relationship. Like, I get it seems like he's not, your friend at that time, but he's teaching you things and you're learning stuff.
He's like taking me under his wing and showing me the ropes of what it is to be a drug dealer. He definitely saw me in him a bit, and we're still friends.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, are these real names that you used?
So no,
Okay.
his name is his.
And you don't have to share also.
His legal name is not, and I'm not going.
Okay.
And his legal name is not Xander, but he did go by Xander, and he was a bit annoyed with me that I used Xander.
Yeah.
So he asked me to change it, if and when I turned it into a TV show. Fingers crossed.
Awesome.
So yeah. So we're gonna change it for the show. But Xander went to prison. He got raided and arrested a couple months after I left. In fact, a lot of people got raided after I left and went to rehab. I've got my theories around that.
Yeah.
But he served 6 years, I believe, and then now he's serving the remaining 3 years on house arrest at his mother's. He is okay, and he has read my book, and I told him he should write his own, and I told him I would help him edit it and try to get him a literary agent if he does, because we wrote a little bit while he was in prison, and he is a better writer than I am, to be honest. Like I say in the book, like he's one of the most sophisticated, magnetic individuals, and he really is that, and I'm just in awe of him, even and the perspective that he has on it all now. Like he even texted me when I went to my San Francisco event and was like, just remember, you're not that person anymore. Like he's like giving me like these words of wisdom. But yeah, so I detected that it could have been a friendship early on, but friendship gets clouded in this world of addiction and crime, and it certainly did with me and him. By the end, I think that he's a plant and by the cops, and I don't trust him at all. And but on the other side of it, we've been able to find another friendship again.
And that is really great that he's still able to share wisdom, because so far where I'm in the book, he is sharing wisdom, and it's nice that he looks out for certain things. Like at one point, I forgot his name. Maybe it was Tomas, the guy,
the identity thief.
Yeah, and you were like, we should go to the cops, and then he was like, well, XYZ, and then I was like, thank you, Xander.
Yeah, exactly. Very that.
So that's great that he has been able to share his wisdom with you in these different chapters.
Yeah, for sure. So, but the crime aspect, I got into it because. Well, there's the reason that seemed obvious then, and then there's a retrospective reason. The retrospective reason is because I never felt like I had a gay community. I was always looking for acceptance and inclusivity, and I was sort of finding that with using the drugs and being in the world of addiction, but the popularity that comes with being a dealer is a whole other thing. And also I couldn't be somebody who was just like sitting around using all day. I wanted to be useful. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to be needed. Yeah. That's honestly what it comes down to, is wanting to be needed. Yeah. And by having the best price meth and the most amount of G in the city, it certainly created this whole universe for me, where my narcissism was hitting brand new peaks. I mean, I would walk around that city, walking around the Tenderloin with like my backpack on with $20,000 in it, and like 3 pounds of meth, and not a fear in the world. Like, you want to fuck with me, I will fuck you up. Like, it just, in my head, I didn't have a gun or anything. I wasn't a violent person, but I was. That's just like the wonder of these chemicals. It really numbs you from having any sort of realistic perspective. Mm-hmm. I was walking around the Tenderloin in January. I had $20 in my pocket. I was terrified. I was like, these somebody's gonna beat me up right now. So it really was just about finding a community at the core. It was about finding friends. Even though they were all transactional relationships, it didn't feel that way in the moment. And then also, I'm a super ambitious person. I wanted. Once I got into it, I was like, well, I have to do the biggest. I have to become the biggest dealer. I got to create the biggest delivery ring.
I felt like I was watching, like, at one point, like Sinaloa, like when I was watching Narcos at one point, and then they were bringing the different parts of Mexico together. Like, this is the Sinaloa team, this is this team, this is this team, and they're coming together, and we're gonna work together. I think I'm at the part right now where you have brought some people together, and also you are better at maybe selling it because they're older, maybe they're not as good looking or whatever it was the situation. And I was like, this is this is like you're becoming the Godfather.
It was very
in that
yes.
situation. I felt like I did see a movie or TV show scene.
It's
you
like
know?
gay Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
And that was actually one of my qualms with not qualms, but my qualms with the amount of stories that are out there regarding crystal meth is like we got a comprehensive dive into where it comes from and how it's made via Breaking Bad and the criminal apparatus that allows it to be disseminated and created, but we don't really get much lens into the individuals that are affected by it, the users and the addicts. And so that's what I aimed to do with the book. It's what I'm aiming to do with a television show adaptation of it, is to really get into the nuance of who are these individuals that choose or succumb, really is probably the better verb, to this type of addiction. What kind of trauma and pain from what kind of background, ends up here? Because it really doesn't discriminate. I mean, you can be from anywhere. But there's usually some common threads, though.
Yeah.
Shame is usually one of the biggest ones.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's I think that's really important to highlight the embodied experiences, because then we can really understand like what types of things play roles into what trauma is still seated in someone, where they look for, these places to heal. And then also, how can our system be better to help them stay healed? Or, because I'm sure people have to deal with different inequities that they face. Like, what if you did time, then you get out, and then life is really hard when you get out, and then those challenges in the 6-month period you're talking about, and then the realities of life.
Totally. And one of the things that's really hit me since I went back in this past January and I visited with a lot of the characters in the book, former colleagues, friends, if you will, although friends is a loose term for the most part, but they were friends back then. And I wanted to see them and look them in the eye and read them chapters from the book that talk about them and let them hear it from my own lips instead of finding out later what it was said about them, and just be honest. And they're human beings that are either suffering an addiction or choosing, because in some cases it really is some people choose to stay in it because that is their whole world. They don't know anything outside of it. They've been smoking meth and in this PMP world for decades. Their whole community is there. All their friends are there, and there's nothing for them on the other side.
And able to navigate so gracefully. Like, sometimes some of these people surge, like some of the clout
fucking terrifying
involved. I was like, who knows who's been doing meth? There was one person in the book, 20 years you had mentioned they'd been doing it.
Yeah.
The one who had mentioned when they liked it when it was called crank.
Yes.
I believe him to be he was a doctor or a surgeon or something like that. And I was just like, wow, like the diversity in all different types of people. The drug doesn't discriminate, but how people are able to just keep living. And
and speaking of that, that's what concerns me the most right now, even more than giving people the support to get out, is those that because it's there, and especially in San Francisco, there is a lot more outreach and programs that will give you a bed, sober living communities. There is resource for that. What I want them to be doing is raising the consciousness around Narcan and handing it out to addicts, because how pervasive fentanyl has become. It's in the crystal, it's in the cocaine. I mean, like, I'm so glad that I only smoke weed now, and I get it from a dispensary, because I would be terrified to still be addicted to hard drugs with knowing that fentanyl is in everything now, and it could just, I've heard so many horror stories of people that I knew from that world that, did a line of what they thought was ketamine or whatever, and
so scary.
Boom, they're dead.
I guess on that note, what are your thoughts on some people? I've heard some people being hesitant or resisting the idea of having Narcan being as accessible in places, because in their mind they feel like that's promoting doing drugs. But really, So what are your thoughts
Yeah, I
on
mean,
that?
it's an outdated, uneducated, socially conservative mindset that is once again, like, would rather just like turn a blind eye to the reality, and it's
The circumstances.
correct. People are going to be using, like, oh, we need to be hitting it from both sides. Like, we have to try to keep those. But then again, I've heard conservatives also say, like, you know what, they want to do drugs and kill themselves. In fact, it's even better. Like, so there's a lot of cold-hearted, lack of empathy going on around that mentality, and I think that that's actually what they are thinking when they're saying, oh no, it's going to promote drug use. I think that they would rather just them drop dead because they see them as degenerates and not humans. I hate to say it, but I've been around conservatives that vocally are at least honest to me about that. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'll give you credit for being honest that that's how you actually feel.
Yeah.
You're a piece of shit otherwise. But
Yeah, that's just language they're using to not be called out for the asshole that they are.
Correct.
In that situation.
Yeah, it's sad. But no, I think Narcan needs to become much more accessible. Nowadays, the fentanyl thing really freaks me the fuck out.
Yeah, well, it is really fucking scary. Even in prison, even like it's getting everywhere. There was like I think 13 ODs at a jail recently just on fentanyl. But I guess back to another question I had in regards to the relationship with drugs and sex. Do you feel like the extended use of any drugs and while participating in sex and finding, coming while high, have you found that now your sexual not expression, how do I phrase this? Do you feel fucking is different now that
Totally.
you're sober? And if so, how so?
Yeah, totally do. I've struggled immensely with being able to find enthusiasm around it because I rewired my brain to enjoy that kind of barbaric, anonymous sex with people that I didn't care about. So disconnecting something that's inherent, like you should, maybe not say should, but it is a healthy expression of love to have sex, right? Or affection or intimacy. And I was exclusively doing the opposite for so long that to have sex with somebody that I care about dramatically, intimately, became difficult to find arousal. Like I would still enjoy the physical act of it, enjoy the fact that we did it, but that like that gusto around it is hard to find when you've reallocated it to this other sect of individuals and activities that are intertwined with chemicals and other featurettes too, poppers and porn, and like I go into all of the accoutrement of the world, and that's not exclusive to crystal meth and party and play. I mean, that's just very much gay culture in general. We have all these little props and such. And I've learned, I'm learning, I should say, that I can reincorporate some of the aspects. Like for a while, I was like, well, no cock rings, no anything that I saw in Tweakerworld. Like I can't have that in my life anymore. No grinder, no like I just
now
have to
you're
get slowly being able to incorporate this and that, and coming back to a healthy place. It's a challenge though. I just took almost a year and a half off from having sex just because it was not calling me. And I was like, oh, well, I don't really want to pursue casual sex anymore. I'd rather wait till I find somebody I care about, but that person wasn't coming along anyways. I did recently just actually have some casual sex, but thank you. And I had a good time. And it was really eye-opening. I was like, oh, I can still enjoy this. And in fact, like maybe I even want to have a threesome again. Like getting back to my roots. Before it was all tainted, before I turned it, before I perverted it all with the chemicals.
Because even the idea of people watching, I find very sexy. Yeah. So even you can have people watching again one day.
Absolutely. Yes.
I like that idea of because we feel things where the thing is absent, and then now slowly you're reintegrating those things to separate the relationship to Tweakerworld, which I think is great for you. That's awesome.
It's a journey, but boy, it's been like 6 or 7 years since I've been out of it now. Wild. Time
Yeah.
flies.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right. Especially, I can't believe that it has been that long. So, what do you find now that with this new lifestyle of post tweaker world, what do you find that you're most appreciative, I guess, in this part of your life that experience led you to see more clearly?
Oh, sure. You know, oddly enough, I really came into my queerness more. I was such a snob before Tweaker World. Of like, I don't listen to pop music. I don't watch like I didn't want to be a basic gay. Like
Meth, you're like, Meth really humbled me.
well, in some ways, it brought me together with more gay people than I have ever been around, and it also I just like pushed aside some of these preconceived notions I had about my identity. And on the other side of it, I was like, wait, I was enjoying listening to pop music and being with all these fags in Tweaker World. I can still do that just without the tweaker aspect, and so it really did. And then also having so much sex, it really opened me up in certain ways as well too.
Your sexual renaissance.
It really was, and I have to say, I had a lot of fun while I was there. Not to say that it was worth it necessarily. I don't think that everybody should dabble in that world, but but I do think that a lot of people should try having a lot of sex, maybe just without the.
It can challenge some of these stigmatizations that people are feeling, or some shame if you do it more. You want to feel comfortable with being like, it's daytime, the lights on, and here's my butthole.
Very that.
That's
where can we use that quote? T-shirt, something? I don't know.
I'm gonna make it a bumper sticker.
Please.
There's too much road rage going
Oh
on,
my
right?
God, hello.
So getting high from the butt. That's one thing I guess I'm wondering, because
you look so delighted to ask that. Yeah. So you know how like you'll see on the news like some frat boy dies from like butt chugging or whatever. It's because the blood vessels are so concentrated in the anus that you can get so much drunker or higher, more intoxicated by absorbing it that way. And so yes, they would like get a lube shooter. I did it too. And water down the crystal meth and then shoot it up your ass.
Yeah.
I mean, it would get you so fucking crazy high.
Oh my God. I could only, so
It's an insane thing to do though.
here's a question then. How about if someone, okay, this might make me sound so dumb. What if someone gets high and then comes in your ass?
Oh, so I don't know about, that's a good question. I don't know about the cum aspect, but there was they would do pissing. So like people that would shoot meth would get way higher than any other people. And I never did. I made the choice. I was told by somebody I really trusted in that world, like, don't ever slam. Slam is the term they used for injection.
Okay.
Don't ever slam. If you slam, you're in the world for life, is what he said to me. So knowing that, I stayed away from that form. But people that would do it would get so fucking high that they would pee inside of another person's ass, and that would replicate it. And I never partook in this particular exchange of fluids.
Yeah.
But my understanding was that it was out of this world.
Wow.
Crazy.
I'm just amazed at our bodies on how
Isn't it
how
nuts?
our filtration system. Like, I can't believe that you could, and it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense given how expensive things are. I mean, it's
when I was working on the book back, I told you I was like working with a conservative Trump-loving lunatic outside of Philadelphia, and I let his wife read an early draft because I was curious. I wanted to see what somebody who watches Tucker Carlson every night and it was raised Catholic and all these things what her impressions of the book would be.
Yeah.
And he says, well, she woke me up in the middle of the night last night and it was just, they pee pee in each other. They pee in each other. It's just like losing her fucking mind.
I thought you were
was
going to say, well, she woke me up in the middle of the night and asked me to pee in her.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, she ain't that cool. Oh my God.
I was like, wow, you've converted them.
That
Look
is
at
so
what your
funny.
writing is doing. Just one conservative household at a time. Now everyone's pissing in each other. That's
know.
great. So I guess then another question I wanted to ask, some of the language was really new to me that I hear. And so one question in regards to referring to different types of gay men, there were different terms.
Oh, yeah.
I heard bears, wolves, cubs,
Giraffe.
giraffe.
The tall ones.
But then there's twink. How come everything is an animal and then twink?
I know. There's also twunk, which is a twink hunk. It's like a muscly twink.
So first explain twink.
I don't listen.
What is twink?
First, I can't believe the onus is on me to explain twink in the world. I don't know where the fucking term came from. It is a funny term though. Twink means a skinny, usually less. Not that hairy gay man.
Okay.
And not necessarily gay either. Actually, I've heard people refer
Feminine performing a little bit?
not necessarily feminine
Okay.
either. But by the way, I did learn one recently that a very feminine top is a blouse.
Oh.
That one really got me.
Oh.
That tickled me. I know that the naming thing is funny. I was working in real estate in Philadelphia when I was writing this book, and I worked with this very conservative guy who was, by the way, obsessed with all the gay culture tidbits. Like he would ask me a million because they think that they're conservative, but really they're curious humans too.
I'm like, which one are you? He was trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and he was obsessed with all the terms, and was like, well, what's this otter thing? I'm like, well, an otter is like a twink but hairy, and I'm like,
Okay.
I'm an otter, and he just thought it was like. He also thought it was like hypocrisy that queer people are like, we don't want labels, and then to have all these labels.
I feel I have run into
Most
that.
of it's for funny.
Yeah.
Most of it's for shits and giggles. To be able to laugh about it. But also to be able to understand, like, certain people are into bears, like and that's and without having to say like, oh, I'm into like plus size hairy men. I'm into bears.
What is a giraffe?
Giraffe's just a tall gay.
A tall
Very tall
gay.
gay.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, so now that you brought up otter, I remember in the book you were talking about some insecurity you had with your body hair.
Yeah.
And how this experience helped you in some way.
Yeah, I actually feel way sexier now.
Yeah.
Having again,
A
I don't
hairy
thi-
booty, you're like, look at my butt in the
someti-
sunshine.
Oh my God! I tend to. I'm getting real personal. I tend to shave it. Though,
Okay.
If I'm
And that's
sexually
all right.
active,
Yeah.
but my legs are super hairy, as you can see here on
Yeah.
YouTube. Hello, YouTube, people. But yes, it's taken me a long time to accept. I was the first kid in middle school that was hairy, and I just like felt a lot of shame and embarrassment around it. But I
As an Indian woman, I felt that too when I was
did?
younger.
Yeah.
Indian girls, my eyebrows started growing into one very quickly, and it was like, why am I getting so hairy so young? And,
right. And that's what's so great about the internet age that we're in now, the TikTok age of like, I feel like so many of these things are destigmatized.
Yeah.
And you find like, oh no, there's a lot of people that actually think it's really hot. Like, oh, people love my bushy eyebrows.
Yeah.
There's
wisdom in those eyebrows.
Absolutely.
So I wonder, now that you said you shaved, have you ever waxed? Have you ever waxed that area?
I haven't. My writing partner does though, constantly, and he likes it.
Yeah, I love it. I recently just started getting waxed, and I'm not saying that I have hair growing out of my butthole. It's not, but when you spread cheeks a little bit, you see some hair in there.
Of course.
And so I've started getting waxed, and I feel so fucking confident. So
Maybe
now
I
when you
will
said
try
you
it.
shaved your butt, I'm like, damn right. Because I love it when I'm freshly waxed. I'm like, who's eating this?
Oh my God, love that. I was asking my writing partner recently. I was like, well, why not just do electrolysis? I was like, you have money. Why don't you just do that? And he was like, I actually like the feeling of it, of going in there. He's got like a sexy man that does it for him. I was like,
yeah, we have conversation.
But me, I'm like a permanent solution guy. Like
Yeah.
I've had 3 hair transplants.
Yeah.
Since I got clean. like on the other side of it, I was like, you know what? I got over meth and sex addiction. I'm not gonna be bald now. And
Yeah.
I've had 3 so I'm like a permanent solution kind of guy. I'm like, if I were to start augmenting my face, which I don't think I will, but who knows?
Yeah.
People are like, well, just do Botox. I'm like, temporary? Nah, not for me.
You're a
Like,
businessman.
yeah,
Why am I going to spend this money to
full
have to spend
solution.
it again over and over again?
Exactly. So maybe I'll look into some acid electrolysis.
Yeah, I like.
How much does that cost?
I don't know. That'd be a job, though, right? She'd be like right there with your booty, just
Literally.
getting to know all of you.
I love where this conversation is going.
Right. Chemsex. That was another term. Chemsex is just while using.
Chemsex is just the generic term for party and play.
Okay.
It's more often used in the UK. There is a fantastic Audible original podcast called White Smoke that I'm interviewed on the 8th episode quite predominantly, and prominently is the word I think I was looking for there. And it is about Ed Buck, who was a wealthy Democratic political donor and rich man in WeHo, who older white man who would fetishize young black gay men and have them in his home and shoot them up with crystal meth. And several of them overdosed, and 2 of them died, and 1 of them escaped. And when the 3rd one escaped, they went to the police, and finally, after a lot of protests because the police were covering it up for a while, they finally went after him, and he was held accountable for his murders. And that's what this podcast details is the Ed Buck case and who Ed Buck was, because honestly there's a lot of Ed Bucks out there. And in fact, I have a phone call on my drive down to LA after this with a mother of somebody who died of a G overdose in San Francisco at a wealthy man's house, and it was covered up by the police as well, according to her. So there's a lot of these cases going on and situations going on. How did I end up on? Oh, so right, chemsex. So on that podcast, for example, because the journalist who hosts it is British, you'll hear him say chemsex. So I try to represent the 2 different terminologies. In America, it's usually called party and play, PMP. In Europe, they usually lend to the term.
All right,
chemsex.
yeah, bringing the international. So have you, in this period of time with Tweakerworld, did you go internationally? Did you ever do meth in a different space, or was it always in the U.S.?
Did. No, I've never done meth outside of this. I've done other drugs in Europe, but not meth.
Okay, yeah. I guess I was wondering the parties. What was the vibe on an international level? How did that scene differ than, or did you just go to any orgies without the meth in an international way? Have you ever?
I have, yeah.
Okay, tell me about it.
I used to go to sex parties or like sex clubs in Amsterdam and Paris. Yeah, but I would pretty much be doing cocaine usually, or very drunk. But usually I would find cocaine. So I was doing the party and play world for many years before I incorporated meth. Like I was doing it with other stimulants.
Is the scene different in Paris and Amsterdam as opposed to here?
Yeah, it feels more mainstream, to be honest. Here it feels more hidden.
Hidden, yeah.
The more like zombies in the dark, as opposed to in Europe, it's a little more openly talked about.
Because maybe how they look at sex, even.
Yeah, and even just like trying to get if when I was trying to get it published and I was researching publishers, I almost wanted to find a literary agent and a publisher in the UK, because when you looked at all the media coverage, there was almost nobody in the States that was covering the party and play epidemic.
Yeah.
But in the UK, tons of coverage. They just like are less prudish about it. They were more open about discussing it.
Fuck, and that just holds us back here, because how many people are getting the lack of insight just hurts people. It's like when we think about HIV and AIDS and how Australia was on the forefront of figuring that out, and we were just denying shit here, and how it just hurts the gay community
very much. And that's one of the main reasons I was insistent on getting the book out there. And one of the main reasons, like I had a lawyer review it, and he was like, you probably are okay, but at the same time, you should probably publish it as a novel. And I was and fictionalize it, or at least say it's fiction. And I was like, you know what, I'm not doing that, because you put out a novel about it, and it's like, well, look what could happen. It's like, no, bitch, this is what did happen.
Yeah.
This is what is happening. So I knew there was risk involved. Like I knew that there was always the chance that I could suffer some sort of consequence legally from the things that I confessed to doing. But I thought that that was more important to get the story out there and let people know that this is authentic, this is genuine, this happened, than to try to cover my ass completely.
Yeah. Has anything come up? Has anybody approached you with
No,
legal things since?
luckily not.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So fingers are staying crossed. It's also very difficult to my understanding from the lawyers I've spoken to. It's very difficult to bring charges without actually catching somebody in the act of it. Like that's why most big drug lords, if you will, go down because of raids, controlled buys, which I go into in the book as to what those are. And luckily, I just got out of it before that was able to come down on me.
Yeah. That's great that you didn't get caught up in that situation.
Yeah.
What a nice getaway.
I mean, truly, I got a DUI at the very end. I'm spoiling things at the end of the book, but that was like a night in jail.
Well,
and then,
you know what? I'm happy with that ending instead of something worse happening to you.
Yeah.
So-
And I'm doing my damnedest on this side to like pay for it. The thing I'm most proud is that, and this is also why I failed as a drug dealer, is that I never got violent. I was insistent. Like people were like, you have to hire security, you have to get a gun. You need to defend yourself. And people started. You're about in the part of the book where people are going to start coming for me left and right, and I let them come because I was violated and beaten up and held at gunpoint. And all kinds of things occurred to me, and I didn't fight back because I knew that if I started to become violent, there was no coming back from it. Like that's once you start like having guns, like that's when they really set their sights on you. And I also didn't want to be somebody who, you're defending yourself. All of a sudden I shoot somebody in the chest. I mean, like I'm a murderer.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't handle that.
And you showed that throughout the book also, just like your way of thinking. Like I also, you acknowledged a lot of inequities in different groups. That's one thing I recognized. You mentioned like racism and different things in the community. And, I respected that. I appreciate it.
It was a very white world that I was in. Not all tweaker worlds are, but like the one that San Francisco's happens to be quite white.
So moving on to our last question.
Sure.
What I ask everyone before they leave is how can anyone, a partner, friends, family, how can someone better love you?
Oh my. I would say I really love when somebody takes control. I'm such a type A individual. Like I'm like I'll plan the meals. I'll clean the house. I'm very domestic. Like to have somebody be like, no, you're coming over for dinner. I'm making like a three course meal, and like to love me via my own love language, the way that I usually express it to somebody else. I really dig that. Where I don't have to do all the things that I normally do, and I feel just very taken care of in that way. I love that.
Could you see how much I love it? I love exactly what you're saying
because
I felt that I feel I'm that type A, type 2, and so I understand that.
Totally that. And then just accepting my sense of humor, and letting me be say stupid shit.
Yeah.
And enjoy it. Being able to laugh at things. I tend to be pretty sarcastic, and I've had partners that like didn't love that, and I'm like, I don't feel like you love me right now.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah.
Be able to laugh about shit.
Yeah, you have
good.
to.
So please tell me your social medias.
So I don't do Twitter, but at Jason Yamas, Yamas on Instagram. You can find me there. I'll give updates. Hopefully I'll have updates about this book or a TV iteration or my next book that I'm working on. Other things.
Dream person to play you in your show. If we're thinking big.
Dream person to play me. I really love Lucas Gage.
Okay.
He's really beautiful and talented. I love him.
And who would play your mom?
Oh, boy, we've had some conversations about that. what is her name? Jennifer Esposito. I like her. She might
Okay.
be a little young to play my mom, unless somebody Lucas's age played me. She's got some Italian spunk.
All right.
To her. Yeah, good question.
You hear that,
though.
Jennifer? She's probably listening to
I'm
this
sure
podcast.
she is.
so.
Yeah. We'd be calling you, Jennifer. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for
so much for having
opening
me.
up and sharing so much of your life when writing this book and sharing what's happening and enlightening me. And which is
Listen,
really
it's the first podcast I've done about this book where we've talked that much about buttholes and coming in asses and all sorts of. This is what the fun of doing a podcast with a comedian. So,
That's what we do here. We talk about buttholes.
I'm here for it.
So thank you everyone for listening and clean your butts. Thank you again for tuning in to Mouthful with Shanti. If you haven't already, follow us. Please give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us out. And please donate. We're like NPR of the streets over here. We're just out here collecting tips so we can keep making this show go. If you're enjoying it and you're enjoying me and you're enjoying our guests, show it through the Venmo. Love y'all.